Good morning. Well, we are entering the decade of darkness once again. You remember that way back in the 90s, Chrétien was the Prime Minister of Canada, and he took an action. And that action was described by the then Chief of Defence Staff, General Rick Hillier, as a decade of darkness. And that decade of darkness comes back to Canada with the proposed defense budget of Trudeau government. In 1990, the actions of the Chrétien government were so detrimental to the morale of the defense services that they voted with their feet and the left army, with the result that the services were deprived of the knowledge and experience to carry on carrying the major burden. Senior military leaders had to defend that decision because of the discipline parameters. They insisted that there are sufficient resources to do the job. But some military officials are always politically incorrect, and they can take and say what they feel proper. And that was General Rick Hillier who called it the decade of darkness. And now the decisions made by the present Trudeau government are calling up the memories. Our defense forces are working under the burden of poorly considered political decisions, and these decisions have increased the international profile of the army, but they have reduced the availability of resources. They are asking them to fly with their hands tied behind their backs. I was shocked that the Justin Trudeau was saying that the Canadians should wait till the defense policy budget. Okay, Canadians should wait. But along with that, he has laid an embargo for 25 years that there will be no further expenditure on defense. Now, this is something perplexing. If he wants people to wait, why could he not wait before laying that embargo? There is a contradiction in what they say. The current and the planned military operations require a wide spectrum of military capabilities, apart from fighting the conventional wars in Eastern Europe. Now imagine after Afghanistan, the Canadian forces have been spread all over. They are in Iraq, part of them are in Syria, they are in Poland, they are in Latvia, they are in 7 countries in Africa. And they are facing high intensity conventional war fighting. Ukraine opposing Russia, imagine it. And that capability and that counter-insurgency which they are facing in Middle East, in Afghanistan, is something unimaginable. And when these activities of the armed forces are camouflaged as training exercises, as security advisors, this is simply hoodwinking the reality. The deployment of the Canadian Army now extending from Ukraine to Latvia, and by the end of the major combat operations in Afghanistan, we will have more troops deployed overseas than ever before. We did not have as many troops in the time of the Korean War. We did not have as many troops in Afghanistan. We did not have as many troops earlier in peacekeeping operations of Africa, but now. And again, they are classified as training missions. It's misleading. They are inherently dangerous. We have seen our people die, and people have been quiet. At the same time, the government has to address the failing capabilities of Canadian Navy and Canadian Air Force. Now, we are sadly lacking, I'll come to that. But to defer procurement until after 2025 clearly indicates that the government is not concerned with the growing obsolescence of the equipment of the Canadian Defence Services, be they Army, be they Navy, be they Air Force. This combined with a higher operational tempo set the guidance set out in 1944 white paper, do more with less. So what happened in 94 was, Chrétien government said, do more with less. And Justin Trudeau is following that dictum to the detriment of the national interest, to the detriment of the interest of the defense services. Now let's come individually, say, to the Royal Canadian Navy. It has simply rusted out of service. It has lost 2 destroyers and 2 supply ships in the last 5 years. Imagine it. And they will not be able to fully replace the entire fleet of frigates and destroyers. Indeed, in recently disclosed correspondence which came to my notice, I'd like to say something, that Vice Admiral Mark Norman criticized the political interference in desperately needed ship replacements as blatant politics and soul destroying. Now imagine when the Vice Admiral says something and criticizes it and is a serving officer. That is definitely a matter of concern. Is it not? Are you not concerned? I am. And you should be if you are not. Unfortunate aspect is that the opposition parties are dumb as dodo. You should be dead as dodo, but they're dumb, mute. They should have come out in full force and condemned this action of Justin Trudeau, but no, they are quiet. Come to that Royal Canadian Air Force. It faces almost a similar situation to Royal Canadian Navy. The interim buying of 18 Hornet aircrafts would apparently fill a discovered capability gap, but don't forget, it will take them a long time to come. As a matter of fact, I think Justin Trudeau and the Defence Minister, actually he's not a Defence Minister, he is a self-promotion minister, Harjit Sajjan, but the defence authorities, let's say, the Department of Defence, let's say, must be feeling bad that they made a pre-election promise, and the pre-election promise was that they will not buy F-35s, and now they realize that the government of Harper was fully justified in asking for F-35s. They are the things which are needed. And unfortunately, because of political compulsions and stupid commitment, they cancelled that agreement. It was a misguided promise. Now imagine the decision to ban or stop buying F-35 and instead buy 18 Super Hornets is something beyond comprehension. Are you aware that the US Navy has decided to phase out Super Hornets? They have outlived their utility. Technologically, they are quite backward. But that's the way things are. Now, what is happening because of this decision? $7 billion have been wasted, which was invested already. The Air Force combat capability is diminished, and the delay of replacing CF-18 fleet by 5 years would make it the Canadian Air Force is sitting duck. As a matter of fact, do you know something which has never happened in a democratic country? Government realized that if this fact comes to be known to the people, they placed a gag order on the procurement officers, and they were ordered to keep their lips sealed. A conspiratorial cone of silence descended, stifling all protest and all information. Well, that's the hallmark of Chinese and the Russians, not of the democratic countries. But can we forget that Justin Trudeau's hero is President Xi? So, if President Xi can act, gag the office, keep the bureaucrats shut, why should Trudeau not do it? And this unprecedented action shows that the government has really slipped in the performance of its duties. And now, when I look at the whole thing, some Canadians do believe that the government is doing a commendable job, acceptable job. And that is because of the public assurances by Canadian Armed Forces leaders. No, they cannot say anything. We have an extremely disciplined force, and they realize that in any democratic society, the civilian control is most important. Had it been Pakistan, the Prime Minister would have to pay help for it, but not here. But these very informed Canadians, the senior Canadian Armed Forces officers, they know better. You see, the military operations are a matter of expertise, and political interference in the military operations is something unacceptable that leads to insufficient funding and ever increasing operational tempo, as is happening today, would negatively affect retention of the high operational and technical staff. Now, already we have shortage of capable people in Canadian Armed Forces. The services do not attract the best people. And when the people come to know, the future officers come to know, the future soldiers come to know that they will be sent abroad to fight 21st and 20th century wars with 19th century equipment, when they will be asked to go to and sail the Atlantic and Pacific in rusty buckets, when they will be told to fly in aircraft which are reminiscent of an era gone by, what would their reaction be? Naturally of disappointment, frustration. And frustrated armed forces can never deliver. Army has to be confident of its equipment. Navy has to be confident of its ships. And Air Force has to be confident of the birds they fly. Until and unless there is synchronization in their minds and the brains and the machine that they are handling, they will not be able to do justice. And that is what is required. In 1990, the decade of darkness we started, left the Canadian Armed Forces emasculated and weakened. The men were great, the equipment was not. With the coming in of Harper, fresh blood transfusion took place. Hopes revived. But now, unfortunately, the armed forces of the Canada have fewer resources to meet the defense needs of the country. Very few citizens or politicians are noticing the fact that until the next security emergency, when they look to Canadian Armed Forces and find that they are non-existent, and where they exist, they are incapable of fighting because their wings have been clipped, their resources have diminished, and then the only thing they'll be able to cry pequy. That's not the way you build great countries. That's not the way you become a leader of the free world. That's not the way that you can waste millions on flying in and out to meet Aga Khans. But when it comes to the basic needs and essential needs of the armed forces, you become stingy, miserly, and extremely nitpicking. We need our armed forces to be equipped with the latest technological equipment so that they can deliver and we can be proud of them. Thank you.